How do you capture the accents of angels? How do you put words to the taste of their light? You cannot describe how their words burn right through you, how you became dizzy with heart-pounding fright. In the midst of your fear, how they sang you a song to the glory of God the Most High. How all of a sudden, that when they departed, that they left a hole in the sky. How do you worship a king in a cattle trough when you cannot bow any lower than he? And what kind of gift to give someone with nothing in humiliating humility? Wrapped up in rags, what a heartbreaking sign. Yet on his sweet face what delight. The darkness that prowls here cannot comprehend this impossibly bright point of light. So everyone listened in awe and amazement to all we'd been told about this beautiful boy. But Mary, his mother, she wordlessly wondered and pondered her treasure of joy. Who could conceive how a Savior was born in a place only fit for the cattle to feed? His poverty made him our perfect provision, the one hope for our every need. The one hope for our every need. We know a lot about Luke. We know that he was a companion of Paul, which surely must have influenced, what he thought about Jesus. He's interested in the gospel going out to the Gentiles, which is, of course, Paul's calling. We know he's a doctor, and because he was a doctor, most doctors in the first century were also slaves, so I'm convinced that he was a slave. And part of that is seen in the gospel in the fact that Luke is interested in marginal people and poor people, and he's interested in slaves. Most of the parables are slave parables. Jesus, 35 parables Jesus tells, and 16 of them involve slaves. And the slaves are almost always the good guys. The hired hands are the bad guys. They're the ones who leave the sheep. The slaves are the ones that are willing to die for their master and go back to the garden again and again and be beaten, and some of them are killed. So slaves are good guys. And the other way that you see that in the Gospel of Luke is you see this sort of reversal of roles. Luke likes to pair individuals up, usually a religious man, with a woman who in first century Judaism were very marginalized, very much like slaves in a lot of ways. So I think Luke has a place in his heart for women. Only Luke tells widow stories. If you hear a story about Jesus engaging with a widow, that's Luke, because only Luke tells widow stories. But what Luke likes to do is show a religious man who should understand what Jesus is doing, but who never does, and then compare him with a woman who in Jesus' time, they weren't credited with understanding much, but who always intuitively understands what Jesus is doing. It's fascinating when you see this. It's Zechariah, the priest, talking to Gabriel in the holy place of all people who should understand it. He should, but he doesn't. Next scene is Mary, probably 15 years old, woman in Galilee, very marginal part of of Israel. And yet she immediately, intuitively understands. Simon the Pharisee doesn't get it, but the sinful woman who's weeping at Jesus' feet, she gets it. And it's straightway through Luke's gospel he does that. So this song connects with that. You see that in the nativity of Luke. Luke's not interested in wise men, right, and Jesus being a king. That's Matthew. Luke is interested in the poverty of Jesus. Only Luke shows us the baby in the manger. That's not Matthew. That's only Luke. The baby wrapped in rags, lying in a cattle trough. And the first people who come and worship him are shepherds who are very marginalized, very looked down upon in Jesus' day. Oddly enough, you wouldn't think it would be that way in the Bible, but the shepherds were very looked down upon. And so this song tries to capture this idea of, this baby is born in a place that, only cattle should be eating, but yet here the Messiah is born. And the first people that worship him are shepherds whose question is, how can we worship someone when we can't bow lower than he already is?